Hey everyone, before we get to today's episode, I have some awesome news that I've been so excited to share with you. As many of you know from listening to the podcast, I am working on my Doctor of Ministry project called Queer Spiritual Formation. In this project, I'm exploring what it looks like to provide spiritual direction in the lives of queer people from a traditional perspective of sexuality that promotes the flourishing and betterment of queer people. As part of the project, I will be doing a 6-month one-on-one spiritual formation cohort with 8 queer Christians. The only 2 requirements is that you are queer and Christian. That is it. There is no required belief on sexual ethics or anything like that. If you are interested, apply now at lifeonsideb.com/resources or through the link in our Twitter and Instagram bios. The deadline for applying is July 15th. And the cohort will begin the first week of September. I would be honored to go on this adventure of spiritual formation with you. And with that, let's head into this week's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Becca. I want to remind you that Life on Side B is a ministry of Posture Shift, a missiological ministry equipping church leaders and parents on LGBT+ inclusion and care. You can learn more about their awesome work at postureshift.com. Also, we want to thank all of our patrons who keep the podcast going and growing through their continued giving. If you love this podcast, we would love for you to consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/lifeonsideb. Now, on to the episode.
Okay. Hi, friends.
Hello.
Mary, you're here.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
Happy to be back. It has been far too long, but I hope that I know that you guys have been having fun without me, and that's good.
But we have
No, there's been no fun. It's been sad times. Ever since you left.
After the episode you just told me about you recording.
Okay, all right. Okay,
Mary,
okay.
literally there's been moments. Henry was even sometimes the one of going, who are we missing? Who's missing in this situation?
Yeah.
That's true.
And then we were like, oh, it's Mary. So, yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so glad that you asked me to come on back, though.
Absolutely.
Because I will not be silent, not on queer representation. No, sir. I have far too many thoughts on ships and shipping. It's great.
Exactly.
You called me back for the right purpose. My time has come.
Yes. I've been really looking forward to this episode. I'm really glad that we're doing this for Pride Month because I just think it's so fitting.
Right, yeah. So will it be released during Pride Month?
It's going to be released in June. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea, since we're recording a lot together, I have no idea really when stuff comes out anymore.
Me too.
Let's record this because it needs to come out in 2 days.
Yeah, no, it's been really weird for me to be in this situation where Mary, you would be so proud of us. We have 85% of the entire season recorded.
Honestly, it's been good. We'll have a really packed week like today. Josh double booked episodes and everything. Yeah. But then we'll have a chill month and then do it again.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive, honestly. Way to go, you master producer, Josh.
He was determined.
Truly.
Oh.
Your audio went out. Josh, your mic's off.
I accidentally was muted. No, yeah, I think we're literally at the point now where all of the co-hosts, except for the season finale, only have one more episode to record. Ashley, you only have one more. Grant, you only have one more.
Wow.
Really?
Gonna give them a break during Pride Month?
Yeah. Ashley, yours is the one with Wes.
Okay, there's that one, and there's that other one we're still waiting on confirmation.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
okay, two more.
Two. Yeah.
Yeah, but 2 are one. But it's real. I've been very shocked. But the hard part for me has been because we've recorded them. At times, I will talk with people going, "Oh yeah, and have you heard that episode yet?" And they're like, "No," and I'm like, "Oh, that's right. It's been recorded. It's not been published."
Yeah.
So I have to be careful.
Well, that'll be a new tier. You get episodes early if you haven't already done that.
Ooh, maybe I need to do that instead of bonus episodes because recording bonus. If there is any proof that the devil is real, it's been how he's been blocking bonus episodes from happening.
I had a thought for
the
one
devil
yesterday, and I forgot about it. That's why I send Josh like random messages when I'm like driving to work that like just come out of nowhere, because I know if I don't, I'm gonna forget it, and I'll send him ideas just in the middle of nothing.
I love it.
This isn't a bonus episode, though,
No.
right? Well, perfect then. Devil is not here.
Devil
today.
is not here.
Yeah.
Devil is not. Okay.
Banished. Begone, devil.
Y'all, we are talking about LGBTQ media. This is going to be beautiful.
I'm so excited. I will try not to gush too much.
Well, there's just a lot of content.
Ashley just gave me a look.
Sure, Jan.
I mean, it's weird how we're in a situation now where I feel like there's a lot of content.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's also, like, there's ways you could say that there's content missing, but all of this, I guess, to start out with, let's just go with what is, let's go with, like, what has been some of the main, like, content that has been really, like, that you've really loved, queer content, like some of your favorite queer content. Let's go with that first. I would love to hear that.
Recently or just in general?
I think either, whichever one. It could be the most recent that you've loved, or actually, let's go with the question that we had already planned. Where have each of you seen queer representation media for the first time? Like, what was your first queer representation media?
I mean, I have to ask. Does seeing a drawing of Remus Lupin and Sirius Black together count? Because that was probably my first time.
You went
like
to
middle school or something. You know, I'm going on, I think, DeviantArt or something, and wouldn't you know it,
you
people
went
were
to
wild.
Harry Potter fanfic so quick.
Oh yeah. That was probably the first one. But if we're talking about, like, actual from corporate down, not just, like, fan creations, probably, I'm going to peeve people off, but I never watched Glee. However, I think some of the first representation that I saw was Darren Criss in Glee and Kurt Hummel in Glee. I vividly remember that happening around 2009, I think, is when he joined the cast. And of course, I was following it because, going back to Harry Potter, Darren Criss was in a Harry Potter musical, and it was hilarious. So I do vividly remember that hitting and everyone talking about it. And I think that was one of the first instances, honestly, of a teenager, or, you know, teenager in the show, at least. I'm sure Darren Criss was in his 20s at that point.
They always are.
But a teenager represented as gay, openly gay, on a Fox channel sitcom, actually. Like, that was Fox, which is so weird to me, looking back on that.
It is wild. That is true.
Let's see. I think for me, I don't know, like, another one, like, I'm like, I don't know if this kind of counts, because, like, it wasn't. But do you guys know it's like a 70s sitcom, Three's Company?
I have
Yes.
heard of it.
Yes.
Okay. So it's about a guy and two girls who share an apartment. And at that point in time, you couldn't do that if they weren't married. So the guy pretended to be gay, so the landlord would let them live together. And I remember when I was younger, like, it took me forever to realize where I had actually heard the word gay for the first time. Mm-hmm. And I think it was in the past couple years. I was like, that's where it was. That's where I learned it. Yeah. But then probably like the first like actual on purpose representation of people was in Buffy. It was Willow and Tara.
Yeah.
That was UPN back in the day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a huge milestone.
Yeah, that was a big one.
It's so
and probably one of the first biggest bury your gay tropes. First biggest instances, right?
I'm pretty sure that's where Shoot Your Gays started. Because
I don't know if it started, but it
spoiler
definitely,
if you haven't watched Buffy.
I know,
yet,
right? Now I'm
Tara
just realizing.
Guys.
I'm so sorry. I just realized that might be a huge spoiler for a 20-year-old series now. But
yeah, at this point, it's like it's like people who said that people like spoiled, like, what was it? Little Women, I'm
Spoiled
like, I'm so
Dracula.
sorry. If you didn't read the book in 4th grade like the rest of us, that's on you.
Oh my gosh. Mine, it's really funny. Okay, so my first I didn't get that they were gay. It was never said they were gay. And then later on I realized, those moments where there's a gay character, and I mean, my parents knew I was gay from elementary school. And so I realized that there were overtly gay characters that they were very nervous of me seeing. And it was because it was known that they were gay, but it didn't connect with me. So that was the wedding planner and father of the bride. I didn't, because I remember saying I wanted to be a wedding planner, and my parents got really nervous because they were gay. And it came out later on. I was like, oh, I get it now. But my first exposure to a gay character was actually Golden Girls, where Blanche's brother comes out as gay. And
of course it is.
Of course it is. I'm a Golden Girls fan. And I remember there was the 2 episodes. There's the one where he comes out as gay, and there's the one where he brings his boyfriend or his fiance, because I think the whole thing is they're getting married. And that was the first time I had ever. Well, and then there's the other one with the lesbian, but with the lesbian friend of Dorothy. So all of those episodes were the first time I ever experienced someone on TV saying I am gay. Or I'm lesbian.
Bless Golden Girls.
Bless Golden Girls. I mean, they were ahead of their time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Grant, what about you?
In so many ways.
I'm trying to think of the first show or movie or something. And I think honestly, growing up, we didn't have cable. We didn't have a lot of channels to choose from. It was mostly an antenna. So during the summer, soap operas would play. Yeah, PBS would play, but
yeah, PBS.
some of the soap operas would also play. And I think there were episodes where there was a gay couple of some kind, and I think that was my first time where I saw a gay couple on television. Yeah. But of course I was I had to pretend that I wasn't really watching it. It was just playing in the background. So that was probably my first exposure to that. Also, weirdly, what's coming to mind is what's that one James Dean movie with the red jacket? Is it Rebel Without a Cause? I think it's Rebel Without a Cause.
I don't know that. No, yeah.
It's an old movie because my dad watched old movies, and I watched there was an old movie channel on the antenna.
Nice.
And one of the characters, he's not gay. Well, explicitly. he for sure is in my how I remember it. But there was this one sensitive, fragile male character, and I was like, oh, I'm him. I'm him, and I want James Dean to take care of me. That's where most of my exposure to LGBTQ media came from. And then Glee came out, and I remember just honestly obsessing over the first season of Glee when I watched it. I didn't watch it when it was happening, but Kurt, I resonated so much with Kurt, and then Darren Criss came on the show, and he was responsible for a lot of figuring stuff out about myself.
Characters can do that.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I totally just forget. This is going to sound stupid and surprising because I try to be connected to the importance of LGBTQ representation in media history, but I forget how important Glee was to so many queer people our age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
When did that come out though? I think I might have not been.
2009.
That's the year I left the country, so that's why I didn't really click for me till year later that was even a thing.
No.
Yeah, because it came out while I was in college, or after. I'm trying to remember, because I think that's why it didn't it was. I wasn't in high school. Or anyone.
Yeah, no, I was 19 in 2009, so I think you were about the same age.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Well, then connected to that, would love to go, since not just the first representation, but what would you say has been like an instance of representation that was important to you personally, and like why was it so important for you?
If nobody wants to go first,
go ahead, Mary.
Go ahead.
We're so excited to hear your voice because we don't get to hear it anymore.
Oh, thanks. I will take advantage of that. Taking advantage of that now. So. Golly, you know what? I'm not going to bother trying to limit myself to one. I think I've got... So first off, 2013, and very end of 2013, was when I basically realized and accepted that I was gay. It was a long coming out process for me. 1 year later, I wonder if Ashley remembers this, the season finale, or series finale of Legend of Korra comes out. And what happens at the end of Legend of Korra?
I didn't come back till 2016, but I do remember the ending because I watched it later.
That's right. Okay, I will keep that in mind then. But yes, so that was one of those first moments, and I remember just vividly sitting in my tiny little college dorm bed watching this and just having a little squee private moment to myself, you know. If anybody who is listening to this podcast wants some fun, go check out like Legend of Korra season finale reactions. Some of them are just wild.
I just watched Legend of Korra like 3 months ago for the first time.
Fantastic.
Okay, yeah. It's good.
And let's just say I called the ending like in season 1.
You did. Dang! Wow! Because Asami is such an interesting character, especially because
I feel like they didn't allude to it. I think I read somewhere that they wanted to, but they didn't, and so they just kind of stuck it in the end, and that's why it was kind of just random seeming, which irritates me not only in that but in other shows.
Yeah.
Got it. I think from what I understand from the interviews with the creators, Brian Konietzko and oh my gosh, Mark DiMartino. I probably got his name wrong, sorry. They had talked about it from close to the very beginning, but they were already brushing up against pushback on the fact that their next Avatar character in this series was a girl at all. And so they're like, we were already dealing with enough controversy on that. We're already pushing back against that, giving her muscles, letting her be, a badass on screen, essentially. Yeah. All of these things. We don't have time to worry about this right now. We can't, we need to pick and choose our battles right now. But then beginning season 3, when they started to realize, Nickelodeon is not going to give us like the same kind of flush, drawn out, season by season show run time that they did with the original Avatar: The Last Airbender series. So let's just go for broke. And so they started seeding in Korra and Asami beginning in season 3, which for people who don't know was about halfway through the series. It ended with season 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's queer coding, which I consider as part of a queer representation. I do not view it as queer baiting at all, even though
it depends on how they do it, though. In my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that'll be jumping ahead to it.
I don't know how much that happens, like necessarily with guys. But with girls, I feel like it does happen a lot. Where it's like, some things can be queer coding, and that's fine. And that's fine, depending on how you do it. But some of it definitely is queer baiting, and it's irritating.
Well, I
go ahead. 100% agree with that. We'll probably have more to talk about Supergirl, but Supergirl is the other major one.
Yes. With
the coming out storyline of Alex Danvers. I was already 100% in to Supergirl the show, beginning of season 1. Season 2,
they changed networks.
They changed networks, so we're now suddenly on the CW, and they felt a little bit more free to play around with essentially characters' sexualities. Essentially, they were like, this is no longer, we are not beholden to the CBS's requirements to be a very family-friendly show. Take that for what you may take it as. So I remember the creators teasing one of the characters is going to come out as gay, and almost everyone within the entire fandom said, "Oh, it's Alex." Just instantly.
Really?
Yes, I vividly remember everyone saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to be Alex." And the creators were stunned and confused, and they're like, "Why?" And just like, well, you know, she didn't really show all that much interest in Maxwell Lord. Boy, we dodged a bullet on that, by the way. The Maxwell Lord Alex Danvers.
I completely forgot about that, and I was like rewatching the first season. I was like, oh right,
right. They seeded it, and it just was not working. I mean, bless the actors, but it just wasn't. Basically, though, what I love about Alex Danvers' coming out story is that she's a late bloomer, essentially. She felt very real and true to me that she has this realization, and then she has to kind of go back and kind of flip through the memories of her life and say, oh, and this was happening, and this was happening, and this was happening. And
the coming out scene with her sister was really good.
So beautiful. I mean, those two, like, playing sisters are excellent. Sorry, continue.
Exactly. No, but another thing that made it like very realistic, I think, was the fact that the actress herself was kind of coming to terms with all that through that. There's been a couple of shows where actresses have come to a realization of their own sexuality through having to play queer characters, and it just gives this depth to the character that I feel like it wouldn't otherwise have sometimes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
No. So, all in all, it was just beautiful.
Love that.
Yes.
Love that.
So yeah,
Ashley?
I cede the floor to everyone else's squee moments.
Any important ones for you?
I kind of second that on the Alex Danvers one. Like I said, the whole late bloomer scenario, it was just very real, and like I said, just the way they did it was really good. They did it with a lot of intentionality. Like, it was something that they did carefully, that they did on purpose. It wasn't something like, oh, well, let's just throw this in there. You could see that there was work that was put into it. It wasn't just, because sometimes that's the only thing you give someone is a coming out scene, and it really became part of her character and the different ups and downs and relationships she went through and everything. And I feel like it was a very well written character. I would say Blanca on Pose was very life-changing.
Yes.
The Mother's Day episode is probably going to be marked in my mind for the rest of my life.
That was going to be one of the ones for me. Blanca on Pose is like life goals for me.
Right.
I want to be
trying
her.
To think. Yeah. Those would probably be like some of the ones that are like most impactful in a way. Like, there's so many that you can just like, but like some that like you would recommend. Like, I would really want you to see this. You would want someone else to see it, whether they're queer or not. Like, this is a person that you could learn from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Those are probably a couple.
Well, and I think why, like, Pose was so important for me, and I think it just is so important because, first of all, it elevated trans women of color. And that all of the actresses were trans women of color. It was not cisgender women playing trans women. It was, and the historical aspect of it, being this part of our community's history that not even we are taught, I think was so impactful. And the way they did it, it kind of connects to something Grant and I were talking about in the bonus episode that we did of, there were only 2 sex scenes in the entire show.
Yeah, that was something that I was I liked about it. Like, they were able to do something that a lot of shows haven't tried to do. Like, they feel like they have to do that to make them important, and they didn't feel the need to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you knew they had sex lives, you knew all of this. Like, you didn't need that, but they were able to show queerness without focusing on the sex, which kind of is ironic compared to the other one that was really important for me, which Grant already knows which one I'm going to talk about. Queer as Folk was really important for me. Like, and
was that like the L word for guys?
Yes.
Yes. Exactly. That's exactly what it is. Yes.
Oh my God. Yes. And it's been on my mind a lot because the reboot is happening in June, and God only knows how that's going to be.
Oh my God.
But I think for me, the first one is like, I remember growing up and watching like Will and Grace and all of these different kind of shows, which like showed very palatable, very good characters. But I felt like Queer as Folk was the first time I saw gay men just living their lives and being like, oh, this is gay life. Like, pretty much Queer as Folk was my sex education on everything for like my college years and all of this stuff. And I remember it being so big to like see the difficulty and the dark parts and the happy parts of all of these like guys' lives, and being like, wow, okay, like this is what I'm potentially getting myself into. And I think that was really really impactful for me.
I'm trying to think of the media that was important to me early on, but also, I mean, what's come to me, what's been most impactful for me is the stuff that I picked up way later. So maybe even like second adolescence, I think, was really a time where I was reading a lot of novels with queer characters, and I was open to watching LGBTQ media on television for the first time and listening to LGBTQ music. So some of the things that are sticking out to me is Tyler Glenn, who's the lead singer of Neon Trees. He released a solo album called Excommunication, which is about his journey coming to terms with his sexuality as a Mormon. And he ended up like having a sort of painful split from his faith community. But that album, I listened to it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel all these songs so deeply. Like, this really resonates with a lot of what I've been experiencing. So that was something that was really important. I read Hanya Yanagihara's novel A Little Life, which is maybe the most devastating novel I've ever read in my entire life. So please, if you're not in a good place, do not read it. However, it followed like several queer men over several decades and how they grow and shift and change. That was phenomenally important. I mean, I read Brideshead Revisited.
A staple, a classic.
Which was as much about my journey into the Catholic Church as it was about my sexuality journey. And I watched Pose. Pose was so important to me. There were a few others. I think, a few other movies that I watched that were really important. I watched Brokeback Mountain, which was like a milestone. I'm like, because I heard so much vitriol expressed toward Brokeback Mountain
when it came out.
When it came out, and then you would think that it would be like this happy, pro-gay celebratory movie with all the way that people were talking about it. People who obviously didn't see it. Because I watched it and I spiraled. Like, it was a depressing movie.
It is a depressing movie, but the people just paid attention to the sex they had on the mountain.
Yeah. Movies like that were really important to me. I read to prepare for my first 2 Revoice breakout sessions on LGBTQ culture. I read Giovanni's Room. Oh my gosh, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin was so good. I read a textbook on LGBTQ history and culture.
Grant came in here all classically prepared.
I already knew. That did make me think of something, though. Like, there's like another one of those things that, like, kind of like what Josh was saying. It was a queer character, but I didn't know it was at the time. Fried green tomatoes is actually a classic in lesbian and queer literature. But the movie was very much so, I wouldn't say not that way, but they kind of
played it safe,
finessed it I liked it like that. I do like that version of it. It gives very much like platonic partnership vibes, and I love it. But I remember as a kid really relating to Iggy, which is like, your kind of like your butch queer characters in it, so say. But I didn't know that's what it was when I was a kid. And then later I figured that out. It actually made me very sad at first because it was like, oh, it's so sinful now. But, yeah. But then I read the book a couple years ago, and it kind of shows that, yes, they definitely had feelings for each other, though it never really says if they had sex or not. It doesn't say that at all. It just says that, that they had feelings for each other. They took care of each other, and I wouldn't say they had a kid together, obviously, because it was Ruth's son, but they raised him together. So it is really a very, very beautiful story, and that's more like on the classic end of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I totally like not even thought about like books or music when we were talking about media.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
In the Lonely Hour by Sam Smith was like a really important one for me.
Yes.
Did anybody listen to Dirty Computer when it came out?
Yes.
I did a little bit.
A little bit. How much? How much, Grant?
Just a little bit. Just a little.
And then so this is really funny. This shows the complications of my high school experience. In high school, the first 2 books that I ever read by myself, because I've always had issues with reading. First one was the Left Behind series. That's one.
Okay.
Around the same time, I ended up reading the Rainbow Boys trilogy books, which was this like angst teenage gay male trilogy about a love triangle, and I read it around.
And you thinking about them being left behind?
I was interested in
That just sounds like a
Revelation,
dramatic
and I was
combination.
interested in a gay relationship. So hence why I was reading these books at the exact same time. So that was my first like queer novel that I read. But yeah, I think then moving into this, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. There's so much queer media. And what do you feel it's like consuming this media as a side B person? When it's like, okay, we see ourselves in it. We might see ourselves, differently. But like, how does that feel like to connect with characters, to also see that there are differences between you and the characters? Like, what has that been like for you? How do you feel like that and everything?
So it's super interesting for me, especially for me, I think, because, like, it was kind of funny to me. You guys are talking about all these classics, and I'm over here, like, I regularly watch The Owl House.
Which is a cartoon.
Which is a cartoon.
Cartoons are just as important.
Yes,
you never even mentioned She-Ra.
She-Ra, oh my gosh. I mean, it wasn't necessarily important to me specifically. We haven't gotten there yet. But yes, She-Ra has queer representation. I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan of one of the characters in that queer relationship, but that's just me. That's fine. You know what? We have probably progressed to the point where we can have, like, diversity win. This queer character is just bad.
Queer characters can also be bad. Represent us.
This is true. This queer character is evil. Anyway, but no, because I watch so many cartoons, like I said, The Owl House, Steven Universe, Legend of Korra, there is no... because it's primarily aimed at children, I feel like I'm drawn to that a little bit more just because, yes, it's a little bit more safe, but it also, there's something so beautiful, I think, about watching this innocent little girl realizing that she has feelings for this other girl for the first time. There's something very sweet and innocent about that. Mm-hmm. So I deal with, in terms of, like, struggle, I deal with that less just because of, like, the media that I watch in general. I am much more interested in animation, frankly.
Honestly, the adolescent that kind of like that stage that you'll find in different shows.
Yeah.
Like there was one that was on Netflix and it got canceled after the first season, but it was about like 6th and 7th graders too. I remember that one. And it was actually, that one was kind of triggering for me, like that stage in life, because I feel like it's something that even if I would have realized about my sexuality back then, it's still not something I would have experienced, but it's just the fact that that's not something I'm going to be able to live. It just kind of sends me for a tailspin sometimes. So like that like stage of like 13, 16, 17, all that, those shows, those are the ones that tend to actually like kind of put me in a bad headspace sometimes. I can deal with the adults. Yeah. Because I'm like, at this point, I've made this decision. Like when I was 13, I just didn't understand anything.
Yeah. And there's also like, it's not like we don't have, yes, it's true that I don't know off the top of my head, at least. I feel like this would have circulated if we really had side B, like explicitly side B representation in any media. But in terms of, let's say, side A representation, I still find that kind of important to me. Ones that come to mind are Elena Alvarez from One Day at a Time. This young, explicitly Catholic family. The mother approaches the grandmother to try and make sure that she's not going to harass her kid now after she has just come out. And the grandmother explicitly references Pope Francis and those kind of off-the-cuff comments on if someone is gay, who am I to judge, essentially. And we'll save context for that for another time. I'm frustrated with
another
some
great
Catholics'
show, by the way.
reactions to
That one I did love.
Yeah, so there is that. There's also, I would argue, Gentleman Jack is another great one. Like, she has one line where it's both a question of gender to her and a question of sexuality. Yeah. How she interprets herself, or at least how they write her in the show, is that she feels like it is, in some way, more proper, because of, this is supposed to take place in the 1800s in England. It would feel more proper for her to be a man to love women. But she's like, but it's true that I love women. And so she has this just great kind of almost throwaway line of deliberation where she's like, God played a trick on me, making me a woman. And there's just something profound that I wish we saw more of. It feels very much like we're starting to see characters where it's no longer, at the very least, it is no longer an either or. You can either be gay or Christian.
Exactly.
We are seeing more gay Christians in media, and I actually think that's a good thing, even though, yes, both of these characters are ostensibly side A.
Yeah, at least there's like some kind of connection. And it's not like, in order to be queer, you have to hate faith.
Yeah, exactly. So I found that meaningful, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's been really big.
Technically answer the question.
No. That's honestly, I think, a really big thing, because I think it's even hard to find that. Just general queer Christians. Like, anywhere of intersection of I'm a queer like, I'm trying to think and I don't, like, it is related to side B. It's not side B representation, but it is really funny that I've been rewatching Will and Grace recently. And it has been funny to see the jokes that I did not pick up on back then. Well, I mean, I wasn't side B at the time, about Will and Grace being celibate partners. Like, they will use those terms. Or sexless lovers. And, like, all of this different kinds of stuff.
Sexless lovers.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. I know this has nothing to do with us, but I'm loving the jokes about it.
Right.
Which I did not pick up on, because that was not on my radar at the time.
I know I've not actually seen them, but I know that there have been at least a couple of like smaller movies where like yes, it's kind of a trope. It's about the queer character coming out, but it's about the relationship with them and their straight friend. And I know some side B people felt represented in those.
Yeah.
In those movies.
Was it Devil something? Handsome Devil.
There was Handsome Devil, and I think there was one with a girl too. I don't remember what it was called.
The half of it.
Yeah, there you go. So I know that some people felt represented in those. I feel like in the sense of like watching media that you don't feel represented on a practical level, so say like in their day-to-day lives, that's not how I live my life. The way I approach that is one, no movies do really, if we're talking about everybody's like specifically people's sex lives, none of them really do. So like there's throw that out the window. If that's what I'm looking for, I'm not going to watch TV. On the other hand, my like safe one is I do tend to well, one obviously wants to see, I want to see other queer women in shows. If it's gonna focus on the relationship, sometimes it's not that great for me. So I do tend to like media that tends to have more gay men, because you can relate to the yearning, you can relate to the not feeling like everybody else, and it doesn't have to be anything that's actually gonna mess with my head at all, because it's a bunch of guys.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah.
So like I do watch like some of the stuff that some of the guys are like more like. I still remember, I think it was the first episode of Queer Eye was just so impactful for me, just to see that it was this straight older man letting all these other gay men touch him, obviously in a respectful and loving and warm way, but it's just something that for so long you've always seen people have a gag reaction to queer men touching them, and this man was just letting himself be loved on by all these gay men, and it was a very emotional episode. I know when I watched it I cried. I know when my husband watched it he cried. Like
Whoa.
it was just a very beautiful episode. So, like, I know that, like, seeing, like, sometimes, like I said, I can relate to the yearning and everything and just have the guys go through it without have to necessarily watch, like, stuff with women. That'll sometimes be a little more difficult for me.
Yeah.
Plus, we've talked about that, media's moving away from that it always has to have a sex scene. I'm like, I don't need that. I can know that that's what they did. I don't need to see it.
Yeah.
Can we move on? But in that, I just kind of, it sounds flippant. I'm like, I get over it. I don't know. If I know it's going to be bad for me, I try to stay away from it. Because, like, you know, at first when you're just trying to absorb everything and it's like, that was a lot. Maybe I shouldn't have watched that one.
Man, I wish I had that self-control. I feel like if I know it's going to be bad
shouldn't
for me,
have watched it, as in I watched it and regretted it afterwards.
If I know something is like gonna mess with my head, I'm like, I want to feel something. I need it. I have to watch it.
I've learned to not do that. Like I think at the beginning, I think it is a learning process, because like at first you just always stay away from everything. So you're like, okay, what can I handle? And sometimes you make mistakes in that process, and it's good to recognize that. I watched something that I shouldn't have. But not to be afraid to watch anything at all. I think a really good representation that they have now on Star Trek Discovery is just this regular gay couple. It's one of the doctors and one of their engineers, their husbands, they're married on the ship. There's nothing steamy about it. They're just, you know, just this married couple that's on the ship. You know, it's just that's all it is. And it's, even though it's scandalous for my mother, it's in my opinion, a wholesome representation.
Yeah.
I think like another area that kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about the, oh gosh, what is it? Like pandering to audience, like what? No, not pandering. Whatever. What?
Queer baiting.
Queer baiting. There we go. Queer baiting and all of that.
Okay, I think I wrote the question. It's like there's a lot of accusations of shows that say that they are either pandering to an audience or queer baiting.
Yeah.
Is there truth in that statement, and is it or isn't it a problem as to which characters we get from those situations?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Directly from the author's mouth of the question. We love it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, would love your thought, because like for me, I always kind of I do agree with you all, like. And I also get really pissed off when we queerify some like characters that might not be queer. Like,
oh really?
So for instance, for me, I'm very big as a Lord of the Rings fan. Frodo and Sam are not queer.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, see, me and Mary disagree on some things.
It's gonna be great.
Well, okay, I don't. They might be bi. I'm not saying that bi people. I'm just saying is that. What I'm saying is they might. I'm not saying when I say queerify, I'm meaning that I don't believe their relationship was sexual. I don't think there was an idea of it being sexual or anything like that. but doesn't mean that the characters couldn't have been bi or something. But like, it's that whole thing, I think, as we talk about inside B, of that attraction and friendship. Of course there was attraction. They were friends. They had a deep connection. But like this thing of like, you know, the conversations around Luca and the conversations around like those kinds of things. But then you have other areas where like the whole Dumbledore thing in Harry Potter, where after all the books come out.
That's just J.K. Rowling being a mess.
That's definitely a part of it.
So,
because she was like, "Oh, look, people read this. I'm gonna make it canon."
Exactly.
That's what I think she did, in my opinion. But hey,
but yeah,
I don't watch Harry Potter.
I know that
have
there's
no stakes
all
in
these
this.
Things. Yeah, I know that there's all these different areas of all of it. But what are y'all's thoughts?
Mary, do you want to go first?
Well, sure. I'll respond to the Lord of the Rings thing by first saying this. The author is dead when I say they are dead. In terms of Lord of the Rings, I would kind of agree with you in terms of just what J.R.R. Tolkien intended was the sort of blood brothers in terms of... Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, we can. Yep, we can.
Okay, sorry. The sound went weirdly dead. But what he meant was the kind of friendship that you get through going harrowing experiences, like, for example, in Tolkien's actual life, World War I. He was one of the only men to come back from that war alive, and, you know, was severely scarred by that experience. And so I think there is value, too, in the representation of two men who love each other that deeply and platonically. Like, so in that instance, I would agree. I don't personally read Frodo and Sam as queer. However, in a different instance, Ashley, do you want to say what it is?
What your guys' disagreement is?
Yeah. Okay. So, and
what is
a lot
it?
of
What
people
is the
say
name of the ship?
Shit, I forgot. Supercorp. Thank you.
Yes, Supercorp.
Okay, so now there are reasons for it, and it's kind of like akin to what Josh said. No one's saying what these people's sexualities are. We're talking about specifics about their relationship and what different people read into it. And I can see why they see that. Like even, and I'm like blanking on everyone's names right now for whatever reason. But the actress who plays Lena, she says
Katie
she's like,
McGrath.
Katie McGrath. She looked back and she's like, okay, now I can see why people say that. She's like, I can totally see like what our eyes are doing and the way we act around each other and everything. Yeah. Specifically her.
It's so funny to me though, because like that has been her consistent line, is just like, you know, I read the script. I have played characters before who had explicit queer coding in. She knew that from the get-go. Her character Merlin, she's played a bisexual lady on Dates. This is all leading up before Supergirl.
Yes, exactly.
And so her response was, she first read the script and was just like, oh, well, that's not there. And then had the grace to say, well, clearly I was wrong. And I'm just like, Katie, that isn't in the script. This is entirely your acting choices.
Yes, exactly.
This is not written into the script. This is all you.
It's part of a way she acts. Yes, yeah. It's something in that, and their relationship is deep. They do have a deep friendship. There is a depth to it, and it is beautiful, and I like it like that. I like it as is, but a lot of people see it as them being in love. Some people see it, some people don't. I just don't. And as to whether or not you want to say the creators to continue to feed into it once they realize that the fans latched onto that is something else entirely.
Well, yeah. And I feel like...
I mean, I just agree that I don't think, especially with Supergirl, because you already had... If we are to take queer baiting as... To me, this is the definition of queer baiting. A top-down executive, because of a marketing decision, they see that they have this queer audience, they want to keep this queer audience around, but they don't want to alienate the straight audience. So they will imply, they will give little hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudges, but they have no plans on doing anything with that. Because Supergirl already had, at that point,
a queer character.
Alex Danvers, a queer character, a queer relationship, they had already made good on that. I don't view Supercorp as queer baiting, unless you count some of the social media sites which very much did play up, like, they would use the ship name, they would say this is the best couple in the CW verse, stuff like that, which I would say is
I remember a specific article that came out, like, when the last season was being produced. They're like, and fans will be satisfied with our, like, however they were ending the show with Kara and Lena and everything. And it was like, one, y'all butchered that. Just
I know, that was... Nobody was satisfied with the end of Supergirl.
At all. It was okay. It was fine. But it was... There's
pandemic circumstances.
But, like, they said stuff like that. So it's not that those people were created that way, but they still did pander to it.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think Supercorp is specifically an example of queer baiting. One that I have, for example, that I have taken issue with, but I still don't mind it entirely, is like in Star Trek Picard, they made 7 of 9 canonically queer, and now she's been read as a queer character since day one, and that's actually something I was like, I can see that, her being like connected to every species. Of course she's going to be attracted to more than one gender. I can see her being bi, no problems with that. But the way they did it at the end of season 1, when these people had barely looked at each other twice, had said maybe 3 words to each other. At the end, they decided to hold hands. Where'd that come from?
That's just love.
No, that's just slapping it on at the end. Like, that irritated me. Making 7 a queer character, that's fine. But y'all did that poorly with no effort.
Yeah. Well, like...
Listen, if you want to talk about no effort, we need to talk about Disney.
Yes.
That uses the word first, like they don't know how math works.
There are 7, 8, 9 first queer characters in Disney movies now.
Yes.
It's so funny every single time, and that's what makes it so explicitly queer baiting. Even if you want to technically say, yes, they were queer, we wrote that into the script, like, it's queer baiting when you are explicitly using this as a marketing tactic to get positive press about you from, like, GLAAD or whatever, which GLAAD obviously is not buying it.
Or even free dad press.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, that's essentially what they're doing, and that, I would say, is very much an example.
No effort.
It's kind of like the feeling I had after the Beauty and the Beast live action, where there was all of this uproar from conservatives about... what's his name? Oh my gosh.
LeFou.
But then I feel like queer people weren't that apt to jump in and defend it, because it was like 2 seconds of him dancing with a guy. We're like, conservatives, eat it apart. We don't really care.
Yeah.
Like whatever. My sister went to see it for her birthday. My mom went and she was super concerned about it. And at the end she was like, was that it? We're like, yes, that was it.
That was
it.
That was it. I mean, I did love...
And my mom doesn't even like these things, and she's like, okay.
That was fine.
I did love the concept of LeFou, like, crushing on Gaston throughout the whole movie. I mean, that was...
That makes total sense.
It made sense.
Total sense.
100%. But, like, the dance part, I was like, that's nothing. Yeah. I just... Like, I love queer representation. I just wish... And as I said, I even love Queer as Folk because it just showed the, like, just this is queer life kind of thing of gay men. But then I also would love romantic kind of representation that doesn't always have to show sex. That's something that Grant and I talked about in the bonus episode about Heartstoppers and why it was so good. It never had a sex scene first of all, between high schoolers. Second of all, between these 2 kids that fell in love. Like, they just could have a crush on each other and it didn't need to become sexual. And, like, I think that there's something about the idea of friendship and the attraction in friendship, and we can deal with that. And it doesn't always have to become a love interest, and it can still be queer. I'm trying to remember, and there's an old movie that was about the friendship between a lesbian and a gay man, and it was about during the AIDS epidemic. I cannot remember. It was a very niche, like, movie, like one of those, like, film festival kind of films.
Sounds good.
It was really good, and I loved it.
I'd watch it
because it was just showing the guy was dying from AIDS, and it was like her caring for him, and it was just this beautiful friendship between the 2 of them as he was dying. And someone, if you can if anyone's listening, you can remember it, please tweet it to me, because I was trying to Google it and find it and I couldn't find it. But I remember watching that and just being really impacted by the friendship of this lesbian woman and this gay man, and being like, oh, yeah, I love this. I mean, obviously I don't love it because he was dying, but like I loved the friendship and the way they cared for each other in the midst of everything going on. So I want more of that. And I get that sometimes that gets into this queer baiting kind of conversation, because the question is, can there be a queer representation if it isn't a love interest, if there isn't a sex, or there isn't this,
without it being super stereotypical? And it's complicated, but I think you can. I think you can see unoriginality in media nowadays everywhere. Just this total lack of originality on all parts. That's why you get so many remakes. No one can think of anything anymore. And I think that's part of it. It's almost a laziness. It's like, you can do it, just no one wants to try.
Yeah.
I mean, are we talking about just in general we want to see more representation with less just kind of sexual content? Or
well, yeah, to an extent, yes, because also I think it's important for, maybe I'm old school, for teenagers to have representation that's not so sexualized. Like, that's one of my big things with the show Sex Education, which I actually do like, but that is not, in my opinion, really a show for teenagers or kids, because it's like, it doesn't, kind of like this thing, like, why don't we have like non-alcoholic gay clubs? Why don't we have gay bookstores? Why don't we have gay coffee shops? Places where people can go that don't have all of this adult content for our younger queers, and even us that just aren't interested in those things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, so I think in media we also need to be able to see that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And honestly, more than that, like, even more than all of that, I would love to see more stuff about queer Christians in general. As you said, Mary, exactly. It doesn't have to be side A, side B. It's just like, just being able to see queer people living out faith. Like,
and that's probably going to be side A when it starts becoming more prolific. There's just no way around that, because that's going to be easier for people. A lot of your very staunch straight allies, that's all they're really going to accept for anybody. And that's, like you said, that's okay. Just to see people that saying like, yeah, of course I love Jesus.
That's what
I would keep my eyes peeled for how the Locked Tomb it's no longer a trilogy, it's like a quadrilogy now. How the Locked Tomb series ends. It is, the author is explicitly a Catholic lesbian who is writing this very macabre memento mori story between these two women. It's been some of the sharpest writing that I've read in such a long time. I just recommend it in general, really. But I'm also very curious as to where she's going to go with this, and I don't know, so I won't expound upon it here. But it's been lovely reading.
Two things. One of them is probably going to get me in trouble, so sorry, everyone.
Yes, start with it first.
Well, no, that one's going to go second. The first one is the one little bit of intersection of sexuality, LGBTQ stuff, and faith that I have really loved was, you mentioned about Queer Eye, Ashley, before. And the season 2, episode 1 episode.
Yes. Mama Sammy.
Yeah.
Mama Sammy. That episode I felt was like so good of this understanding of this intersection. And I felt like it was so beautiful and so needed. Like, I normally don't watch Queer Eye currently because I feel like it's like, I don't know. Like, none of this bad. It's just, I feel like it's really good for straight people kind of coming into it, or people like, as you're kind of like working through your sexuality and stuff. And it's just kind of like how I've now put RuPaul's Drag Race into gentrified drag section. It's really good. But, my other one. Okay, this is where I'm going to get controversial. I was having a conversation with someone on social media. Who has watched The Chosen?
Not me.
No,
sorry.
You need to.
I know everyone keeps telling me to, and then
I'm like,
and then I don't watch it harder.
Yeah,
I'm very behind on it, but I do watch it. And
okay,
who's your character?
I obviously they'll never do it, but I would love for one of the disciples to be queer.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool.
And I feel like the Thaddeus gives. No, don't do that. We don't need to be the villain.
As if, oh my gosh, as if people don't already read that into, like, Jesus Christ Superstar.
I know, right? Well, I mean, we already get enough. We didn't even talk about that, like queer villains and all of that. Ursula being like my favorite villain growing up and being based on a drag queen. Loved it.
Divine, yeah.
Oh, Divine.
No, it's fantastic. Howard Ashman.
Yeah.
You were gone too soon.
But seriously, in that show, Thaddeus and Matthew both give me queer vibes. I'm here for it, and I want it to happen.
Oh my gosh.
I want it
That's
to.
never going
But the
to
thing
happen,
is like my only thing with that is like we just don't know what that. I feel like we don't know what that would have looked like in that context.
Yeah,
because
we don't.
It was just so far from what we the way we see things, the way we understand things, and for someone to be, I think, queer in that time would have been like specifically a sex thing. So it's like it would have been weird.
It would have been like there was acknowledgement. Like this is where we're gonna get into biblical. Like there was acknowledgement of attraction, but it was not connected to identity. So you're 100% right. It would be very hard to do that because there's just not. Oh, how do you do it culturally? And they've been doing everything very culturally well, I feel like.
Exactly.
So
and that's one of the reasons it's good.
Yeah. But I've talked with people about like that would be so fascinating for me.
Like we don't even know if at that point in time people related any like stereotypic mannerisms to the people who participated in those type of sexual acts, because that's kind of like how it was considered. Mm-hmm. So we don't even know if like that was a thing.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, there were definitely some stereotypes. Like, I think of the category of the eunuch in the ancient world was very much a third sex category. And people would say that they're like sexually deviant, or they're like emasculated, like culturally and socially emasculated as well as physically, and yada, yada, yada. So there are definitely stereotypes, but if we're going to do any gay Bible characters, we got to go with the OG. We got to go David and Jonathan, right?
David and Jonathan.
Well, I mean, if we have to stick to the apostles, I was honestly surprised that you didn't mention John.
Yeah, it's got to be John, girl.
Well, I'm just going off of like how they're coming off in the show. John doesn't give me queer vibes.
You're saying like the way that the characters, like their personalities
are. The way that their personalities are.
Which I would say Thomas.
I could see that. I could see it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay,
but
we are...
It just turns out Jesus has 12 gay followers.
I'm just saying, like, the way that they
all of
the characters, I would say that this person as opposed to who Josh is saying.
And I just want to...
No. This is canon now.
I want to clarify to everyone, I'm not saying I'm thinking any of these disciples were queer historically. I'm talking about the show. So
the way that they have, the personalities that they have given these men.
We've got to take them all. Like, we were talking about the possibility that one might... No, it's all of them. We got to take them all of them. Now. Sorry, guys.
I'm with Grant. Sorry.
They're all queer. No, talking about David and Jonathan, I was really excited. ABC for a while was doing a show based on 1st and 2nd Samuel of kings and prophets, and it only got one season. But David and Jonathan are both in it. And, like, you begin to see the beginnings of them getting to know each other. And I was like, oh, what are we going to see?
Are they?
Are they? And then they canceled the show after one season.
Dang.
I honestly don't like the queer reading into, like, David and Jonathan's relationship.
Yeah.
It's a pet peeve of mine.
Mm-hmm. I can see it.
What have you... Again, like we say, even in, like, the queer reading of shows, what have you may have been their sexualities. I don't know. I just don't like the reading into that of their relationship.
Agreed.
Sure. I mean, but we can't help but doing that for straight folks all the time through all of Scripture. It's just like everyone is assumed to be straight until otherwise. Why can't we just assume that someone is gay at the outset?
Oh yeah, no, like I said, do that with whomever you please.
Yeah, the idea is that they had a sexual relationship or something like that. That was like
I don't think they did, but even if they did, like that's not the point. My point, anyway. I just I sense so much resonance between my life and specifically the life of Jonathan. Because I think Jonathan is. If either of them are queer, it's Jonathan, not David. But I mean, I think they both are. But
yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I could get those vibes.
Shout out to King David.
Shout out.
Bad queer representation.
Right.
Just straight up bad.
Exactly. We don't claim him.
We don't claim you.
No, we
wow.
do. We do claim you, David.
This episode is getting unhinged.
So quick.
We're gonna get canceled for this.
I really think so.
Oh, if she who must not be named gets a hold of this episode as much as she loved Preston's book, dear God.
I can't.
Well, if that's the case, then let's give her something really to choose.
It would be the first time anyone actually like bad analyzes anything. I was just talking to someone about this. I feel like we at Life on Side B go so under the radar for a lot of people that like
I love it. Honestly,
I do.
It's okay
like
with
they'll
me.
criticize Side B in general, but like they never come after us, and I love it so much. But
we got that first random one that Grant sent us the other day, but
Yeah.
that was like it was so mad
So
that
weird.
it was like we're not even gonna acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So off the
In
wall.
defense of the queering of characters, I don't know about people necessarily, historical people, but the queering of characters, I don't know. I feel like this kind of has to go with like an older mentality that may not be the current media landscape anymore. The idea that, in the past we had very few queer characters, so queer coding or reading, doing queer readings of certain characters felt like representation when it wasn't top-down corporate representation as intended. But I think that could still be meaningful, and you still
To some
at the
people,
very
yeah.
Yeah, like, for example, I would not count Elsa as queer representation. She's not. However, she is queer-coded enough. I think accidentally. In the same way that I honestly think this whole Supercorp coding was entirely accidental. It's somehow they somehow accidentally wrote
Katie
one
McGrath
of the best...
with her eyes.
No, it's not just Katie McGrath. I really think, like, they accidentally wrote one of the best love stories in the DC universe. It's just like, no, it really is. It was an accident. But going back to Elsa, that was important to me specifically.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, we had conversations.
100%.
So I think that still can be valuable, even if obviously you don't want to have your head run away with it. People who demand certain things of creators when they're like, sorry guys, that's not the show that we wanted to write.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen fans become nasty because they've queered the characters in a way that was never intended, and they couldn't stay in their own lane. And I'm not about that, frankly. Creators have to deal with so much junk in general with fan reactions on Twitter and all the
can't please everybody.
Vicious hate. Yeah. So I'm not about that. But I don't know.
It's a journey.
To me, I think there's still value in doing queer readings of characters.
One day, if we ever get to that place of I ever feel comfortable enough with audio editing at that point, I want to do some audio drama stuff of like Christian stuff. I don't know. That's been a dream of mine. It might be way in the head, but it's kind of been one of those things of like, well, if they're not going to give us queer Christian representation, let's just do it.
Let's do it. Hey, sign me up.
Ooh,
Fine. I'll do it myself.
Excellent Thanos voice there.
Y'all, this has been fun. We probably need to close it before we say more things that are going to get us, canceled and
we were canceled from the get-go.
Oh, so. Yeah. I mean, definitely the gay disciple mention was going to just...
Props to Josh for all the editing that he will have to do on this episode.
Oh, God.
No, it's staying in here. It's all staying...
Do we want to talk about is all representation good?
Oh.
Because I have a specific example where it's not, and I just...
Oh, give it to us. Give it to us right now. Let's finish off this way.
Do you guys... Have you ever heard of this show called Supernatural?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I haven't watched it.
Have you heard this pairing called Destiel?
No.
No. Wait, is that one of the angels?
Yes.
No!
Oh, no, it's... Oh my gosh. How do I even describe what happened remember the 5th of November. November 5th, 2020. It's like the, no. This was a thing. I cannot begin to stress upon you how much this blew up Tumblr. I mean, on top
remember.
Of that,
but because I don't know Supernatural, I understood very little of it. But yes, it was days that I could get through nothing else but that.
I knew nothing about Supernatural until this day, and then I had to investigate more because I was just so enamored with the craziness that was happening on November 5th. I mean, partially because you have to remember November 5th, 2020, it's like day 3 of the U.S. elections. We still don't know who the president is at that time.
Yes.
People are losing their minds, basically. There was a rumor that Putin resigned, I think, that day. Anyway.
What a day.
What a day. So this episode drops. It's 2 episodes before the finale of Supernatural. The angel is about to be sucked into turbo hell. It's hell, but worse, basically.
Okay.
And
get past that.
One of the last things that he says is, "I love you," to this character who fans have loved the interactions with ever since this angel first showed up on the show in season 4. Basically, to give you a sense of like the commitment that they kind of had around each other, one of the first plot lines is the angel goes down into hell and rescues Dean from hell. So there is this great automatic sense of we're bonded deeply together. It's kind of beautiful in a lot of ways, except for I'm never going to watch this show. The show is 15 seasons long. No way.
Oh my gosh, what a commitment.
I know, good gosh.
Yeah.
But, so this character confesses his love, is immediately a victim of bury your gays, essentially.
Oh no!
They are never talked about again in the last 2 episodes. Remember, this is 2 episodes before the series finale. This angel character is never brought up again. The other character who was told that, was confessed to, Dean, never brings up the angel again, never brings up that they had a deep moment. And so people were like, okay, well, like, did they edit it down or something? What happened here? Like, and then it turns out, like, a month later, in one of these Spanish releases, with the Spanish dub of the thing, they say, "Te amo y yo a ti." So it is explicitly romantic, and it is explicitly, like, reciprocated in the Spanish dub. And so they became canon in Spanish.
Okay, that I did not know.
That is so funny.
I just, when I saw this question, I'm just like, we have to talk about this because not all queer representation is good.
Yeah. No.
And that is one of the funniest examples ever.
Yeah. Well,
I'm so sorry if anybody is listening to this and was like a huge Destiel shipper. I'm sorry. Your feelings matter.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, I think that the whole bad representation also goes back to a little bit of what I said of, like, I am a huge queer villain fan, but the amount of queer villains that we have had, it's like, okay, we don't all have to be a villain.
Well, yeah, it's because for the longest time, the way that they would make villains extra evil sounding to people is to make them sound gay.
Yeah.
Which, like, is true, but they shouldn't say it. No, just kidding.
I mean, literally the best example is Ursula, but almost every Disney villain you can find a queer, like,
Scar.
foundation. Yeah.
Jafar.
Jafar. I mean, a lot of them. A lot of them. And so it's like, it's not necessarily, I mean, we love a good queer villain. We love a good queer villain. But
they are flamboyant and they are clearly having fun. And who are we to stop the time?
They really are. But there it is. Anyway, y'all, we probably need to be wrapping this up. Happy Pride Month, everyone.
Happy Pride.
Have fun. God loves you. Understand that in this moment that you are loved. Mary, it is so good to have you back. You are always welcome back.
Absolutely.
You are always welcome back.
Thank you for bringing me on to talk about Supercorp and Destia.
Remember, you still
I couldn't pass that up.
Remember, The one episode we're requiring you to come back for is whenever this whole thing ends, we're bringing back all the co-hosts. So if nothing else, we'll hear you one more time.
The series finale.
Series finale.
Oh man, we're gonna have dramatic love declarations. I'm sucked into turbo hell.
Which, to be clear, is not scheduled at all yet. Like, we don't have a plan for a series finale yet. Just to be.
Oh, you were making me worried. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
You can't just drop the word series finale, Josh, and then move on.
I mean, I'm just trying to keep it in all of our co-hosts' minds so that, like, Mary knows we need her back when this all ends.
Yeah.
Oh, you could not keep me away.
Cannot wait.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good Pride Month, and we will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Later.